Streets are clean, crime rates are low, and society values harmony above all else. Yet within this calm and structured environment lies one of the most unusual criminal organizations on Earth, the Yakuza, a network that has existed for centuries and shaped Japanese society in ways many outside the country never realize. The story of the Yakuza is not a simple tale of crime. It is a story of outsiders who forged identity in rejection, a story of rigid codes and violent discipline, and a story of how a criminal empire could operate so openly that its members once had offices with signboards, business cards, and newsletters. To understand the Yakuza is to step into a realm where tradition and crime mix strangely, where the shadows of history linger, and where the line between villain and guardian has blurred more than most realize. The Yakuza trace their roots back to the Edo period, roughly the 1600s to the 1800s, when Japan was ruled by the shogunate and society was sharply divided into classes. Merchants occupied the bottom of this hierarchy, and many struggled to survive through legal trade alone. Among them were the takiya, itinerant peddlers who traveled from village to village selling cheap goods. Because they operated on society's margins, they formed tight-knit groups to protect themselves from thieves, samurai harassment, and rival vendors. Then there were the bakuto, gamblers running illegal gambling dens in abandoned buildings, forests, and riverbanks. Their world was defined by card games, dice, and debts that could ruin a person's life. The bakuto are especially important because many of the classic Yakuza rituals, like finger-cutting, originated from gambling punishments. If a gambler couldn't pay off what they owed, they might offer a piece of themselves as symbolic repayment. Over time, these two groups of misfits solidified into semi-organized clans. They offered protection, enforced their own rules, and created internal hierarchies that mirrored family structures. The modern Yakuza's parent-child loyalty system traces directly back to these early relationships. One of the most fascinating and troubling elements of the Yakuza is their code of behavior, often referred to as Ninkyodo, or the way of the chivalrous man. The idea was simple. While they were criminals, they saw themselves as criminals with principles. Loyalty to the boss was absolute, betrayal was unforgivable, and obedience was expected without question. The Yakuza romanticized the idea of the vigilante, someone who upheld honor even while breaking the law. This code also involved harsh punishments. The most notorious is yubitsume, the ritual of cutting off part of one's finger. A member might slice off a joint as an apology for a mistake or as proof of submission. The act was symbolic. Losing part of the finger weakened the hand's grip on a sword, making the offender more dependent on the group for survival. Yakuza tattoos, full-body irizumi, also reflect their code. These elaborate designs featuring dragons, koi fish, and mythical creatures are created through painful, traditional methods. Tattoos symbolized courage and loyalty, but also made members instantly identifiable, further isolating them from mainstream society. After World War II, Japan lay in ruins. Cities were demolished, millions were homeless, and the government struggled to maintain control. In this chaotic environment, the Yakuza grew rapidly. They provided black market goods, protection, and underground jobs when legitimate work was scarce. By the 1960s, the Yakuza had become a powerful force. The largest syndicate, the Yamaguchi-gumi, expanded into a national organization with thousands of members. They controlled territories in major cities, influenced construction companies, and managed nightclubs, gambling dens, and entertainment districts. What made the Yakuza unusual was their willingness to operate openly. Many groups had official headquarters. Bosses held press conferences. Newspapers interviewed them like businessmen or politicians. Some Japanese citizens saw them as a necessary evil, dangerous, but predictable and somehow part of the nation's social structure. This era of visibility created a myth that the Yakuza themselves encouraged, the notion that they were both criminals and guardians, protectors of the weak, modern samurai. The reality, however, was far more complicated. Despite the romanticized image, the Yakuza expanded aggressively into profitable crime. Extortion became a major income source. Businesses paid protection fees to avoid harassment. Construction industries saw Yakuza involvement in labor supply, bidding, and land deals. They were deeply involved in illegal gambling, loan sharking, fraud schemes, corporate blackmail, prostitution and trafficking, money laundering, stock market manipulation. Yet, bizarrely, Yakuza groups also sometimes behaved like relief organizations. During disasters like the 1995 Kobe earthquake and the 2011 tsunami, some groups delivered food, water, and supplies before authorities could act. This dual identity, criminal and community helper, made public attitudes complex. Today, the Yakuza's power is shrinking. Starting in the 1990s, Japan introduced strict anti-organized crime laws. Banks closed Yakuza accounts. Businesses could be punished simply for interacting with them. Members found it harder to rent apartments, buy cars, or even get cell phones. As a result, official membership has dropped drastically. Many Yakuza offices have shut down. Public support has evaporated. The once massive Yamaguchi-gumi splintered into rival factions, weakening its dominance. But decline does not necessarily mean disappearance. The modern underground. As traditional Yakuza groups weaken, new kinds of criminal networks have emerged, more violent, more unpredictable, and far less tied to the old code of honor. These include small street gangs, fraud syndicates, and international groups connected to cybercrime. In some ways, these new criminals are more dangerous because they lack the structure that once kept Yakuza violence under control. Meanwhile, some former Yakuza members struggle to reintegrate into society. With criminal records and tattoos marking them, finding legitimate work is difficult. Japan offers limited rehabilitation programs, leaving many trapped between crime and poverty. The Yakuza are changing, but their influence is not gone. It has simply shifted into new forms. The Yakuza occupy a strange place in Japanese history. Criminal, yet cultural, feared, yet sometimes respected, violent, yet disciplined. Their story reveals contradictions in Japanese society. Its emphasis on harmony versus its long-standing tolerance for certain kinds of organized crime. Its modern order versus its shadowy past. Their influence continues to fade, but the legacy of the Yakuza, its symbols, tattoos, rituals, and myths, remains embedded in Japan's collective imagination. The world they built, shaped by loyalty, rebellion, and rigid hierarchy, stands as one of the most complex crime syndicates ever to exist.